Welcome to B&B Movie Reviews. We have another all-streaming show for you today with the latest murder mystery starring Benicio Del Toro, a retro slasher flick, a fair play on the battle of the sexes, and a courtroom drama starring Jamie Foxx. Don't go anywhere. B&B is coming up next.
You hit?
No, he's got my gun.
Shots fire when Benicio Del Toro and his partner go to investigate a potential suspect in the murder crime mystery Reptile, currently streaming on Netflix. Bryan, last week we talked about The Creator, a film that I thought was stylistically cool, but maybe a little too tired regarding its narrative. I think the same could be said about Reptile, but stylistically and performance-wise, I think it saves the day.
It's so funny that you mentioned The Creator from last week, because as we were watching this clip and thinking about this movie coming into this review, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, you know what? These are familiar tropes that we've seen in movies, you know, time in and time out, time again. So I was like, okay, going into this movie, you know, what's new that it's going to bring? And it doesn't necessarily bring anything new, but the direction, the performances, the aesthetic, the look, the feel
the
of it.
cinematography is really strong in this movie.
I really like it.
And from the moment the title card comes out, I'm like, oh, okay, movie, I see you. This is going to be fun. And I do think that the ultimate resolution of the story is boring.
I'll agree with that.
It weirdly, completely removes Justin Timberlake from the plot. Like, he disappears for the last third of this movie, and it just, you can feel his absence. Also, though, I didn't quite miss him. You know, you feel it, but I like what was going on. Benicio Del Toro, so strong, so good.
And I think that's the thing when it comes to this movie, because not to give too much about the plot away, but when you're dealing with a murder mystery and you have suspects and Justin Timberlake is at the center of this, and there are other things that are going on behind the scenes that reveal itself towards the end. But like when he goes away, you don't necessarily miss him that much because Benicio is so compelling and how he kind of gets wrapped up in the story as far as like the mystery of it. Not to get too much away, but like
even beyond the mystery and the central story, there are elements to Benicio Del Toro's backstory that are withheld from us and are never fully dished out either.
No, it's not.
And I liked how that they played with that. And it does the Chinatown thing where it gives him a wound on his hand at the beginning of the movie, and that hand kind of becomes a metaphor. And then you're thinking about the title. Why is this movie called Reptile? Why is this movie called Reptile? And then the last few shots of this movie, it gives you a little bit of information and image to suggest what the metaphor of the title is. And I loved all that stuff. I loved it.
I want to bring up too, one thing that I really responded to in this movie was the relationship between Benicio Del Toro and Alicia Silverstone. They play a married couple, and you know, she is not just the wife.
Yeah.
You know,
At first, I was like, why is Alicia Silverstone even in this movie?
Exactly, and she is his wife. She's not a detective. She's not, you know, in the force or anything like that. But because of their marriage, and you feel it between the two of them, that she kind of helps him.
Yeah, she
with
contributes. She is a detective, Bryan.
Yeah. She's just not on the payroll. but she helps with the investigation, and it's almost like that supporting wife. But the way that it's played in this movie, I love the relationship between.
But then there is also this element of his house under construction, right?
Yeah.
And I like. There is a moment with a faucet that relates back to the crime scene, and the way that this movie uses that faucet and drags that faucet
all the way
to the climax of the film is really clever, really engaging. And this little bit of mystery that is dropped in between Alicia Silverstone and Benicio Del Toro, what's going on in their marriage, also very engaging. And the film knows when to give you stuff and when not to give you stuff.
Yeah, I just enjoyed watching the two.
Yeah, they're
of them.
great together.
And this is maybe the first time they worked together in like 25 years, because they were in Excess Baggage
You
together.
reminded me of that off camera, and that blew my mind. I totally forgot about that movie.
Yeah, so
great to see them again.
Yeah, so to see them back again, you know, later in their older age, and see them kind of playing this married couple and how good they are, like their chemistry together, it was just fascinating to watch.
And what do you think of Timberlake?
You know, I've always been a Justin Timberlake fan. I've liked some of his performances in movies before. He's kind of like an actor and a creator that I root for. I think his performance works for this movie. I really liked how they positioned his character as far as like being in the center as, you know, somebody who is grieving for the loss of the person who was murdered, but also at the center of possibly being a suspect as well.
They play with this like concept of his proactiveness, right? Like how proactive is this character? How strong or weak is this character? And the way that he rides that balance, I think, is fun to watch. But then they jettison it a little bit towards the end.
Yeah, I know, and then they just bring him back at that, you know, the very last moments. But I thoroughly really enjoyed this movie. What's your rating for this one?
You know, we're the B&B show.
Yeah.
We give things a B+ if we like it. We give things a B- if we don't. And I absolutely recommend this movie. It's on Netflix. You got to hit play on it.
Yeah.
Absolute B+.
Yes, I agree. B+ as well. Definitely check this one out. I mean, if you're a fan of murder mysteries, like I said, doesn't really, you know, like reinvent the wheel, but it does some interesting things with the story.
Good.
It looks a very stylish movie. I like this one a lot. So yeah, those are our thoughts on Reptile. When we return, we're going to take a look at a new horror comedy, Totally Killer. Stay right there.
Every minute counts in a poison emergency. That's why Poison Help is standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in over 100 languages. Save Poison Help as a contact in your phone today. Call your local Poison Center at 1-800-222-1222.
Pam Miller? Yeah?
Take a picture. It'll last longer.
Sorry, you're just... not what I was expecting. I'm Jamie. From Canada.
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna shake your hand because I'm not 45 and a man.
Come over after school and you can set up for the party while I do my hair.
Okay. You know, where I'm from, birthday parties are considered so lame. Like, I don't know, maybe you should cancel it.
Maybe you should fuck off and die.
Jesus, Mom. Mamacita. Ay. Ay. Mamacita.
When Jamie gets pulled back into the 1980s to stop a serial killer from killing her mom's friends, she's taken aback when she meets her mom's younger self and discovers that she's not the most likable person in the slasher comedy Totally Killer, currently streaming on Prime Video. So, Brad.
Yes.
I saw the trailer for this movie. I got super excited because looking at the trailer and the vibe of this movie, I was like, oh, Christopher Landon has a new movie coming out.
I thought the same thing.
And I was like, oh, bet. You know, I'm a huge fan of Happy Death Day to You, the other Switch movie. Freaky. I can't, yeah. So I was like, oh, bet, totally killer. Okay. And then I was like, wait a minute, he didn't direct this. Okay.
Nachka Khan directed it.
Yeah.
But it does feel like a Christopher Landon movie.
Yeah.
I think it is a fun premise.
It's a very fun premise.
It is Back to the Future, the slasher.
Yeah.
And as such, I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that some of the elements with time travel were pushed a little bit further.
Yeah.
I think it's the most basic version of this movie that you could do.
Yeah.
But because the premise is so fun, it's just enough to be entertaining.
Yeah, it feels like they didn't want to get too deep into the time travel aspects of it because of the fun premise of it.
And the confrontation with the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Like, with Back to the Future, there was so much nostalgia from Robert Zemeckis' point of view to the 1950s.
Yeah.
And like there were maybe some like dark undertones that they exposed in Back to the Future, but it didn't really want to play with that at all. And this film wants to confront the 80s as like, oh my goodness, you guys would do this back then? This is atrocious.
Yeah.
And her parents are monster teenagers. These are the worst teenagers of the 80s, and they happen to be mom and dad. And that is fun.
Yeah.
But again, I think this movie could be even sharper.
I agree. I think the movie can be sharper, but going to that point, and I did want to talk about that, is I think that's one of the things that I liked about the movie is that idea of going back, and of course we saw it in Back to the Future, but going
Which
back,
they keep bringing up over and over and over again.
They do.
Right?
They do.
Like they use Back to the Future as shorthand, and I'm sure that's what you would do in this scenario in real life because you have that information in your head. But to constantly go back to Back to the Future, it's like I get it.
I know.
Get it.
Yeah, I think they went to that well a little too many times. But the idea of like seeing your parents' younger self and not, you know, them in seeing how your parents may not have been the most likable people, and like you getting to see how your parents were. Like, oh, if I knew you when I was your age, I wouldn't have liked you. But I just like that. I just like that idea and the way that she plays it when she sees her mother and the relationship that they have when she's back in the 80s. I find that to be interesting, you know, especially like juxtaposed against, you know, her relationship that she has with her mom in the present day.
What do you think about the time traveling killer element? Like why the killer is doing what they're doing?
You know, that to me, that seemed a little bit confusing to me. So because
don't spoil it.
I don't want to spoil anything, but because we're dealing with two different time periods, there's something that they do, and especially when they reveal who the killer is and the motivations behind it.
Not satisfying.
It's really not. It's not satisfying, and thinking on the movie, you could kind of see where it was kind of going with that. But then, like, when you're in the 80s, you're also, I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, I just think that aspect of it didn't work. But like, if you're going to go that way,
I feel like there are moments earlier in the film that they could ramp up, not to necessarily telegraph where they were going, because they already are telegraphing, but they could sell the climax of this movie a little bit more by tweaking some of the earlier elements of the movie.
Yeah, and I mean, and you're right. I think going to the time travel elements of it, I think they could have pushed like that ticking clock a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, with her trying to get back to the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought they could have pushed that a little bit more to ramp up that suspense.
And to maybe have the time, like the timelines communicate with each other a little bit more.
That'd have been interesting too.
You know?
Yeah, that'd have been interesting too to see.
But now we're writing our own movie.
And I want to. Yeah, I'm trying to get away from that.
Like that is the fun of the film, is it does engage you as an audience member.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that like nitpicking that you start doing is also enjoyable.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's part of the fun of the movie.
Yeah.
So what's your overall rating for this one?
I'm less excited about this than Reptile, but it is streaming on Prime, and if you have Prime, you absolutely should watch it.
Yeah.
I would recommend it. It's a B+, but barely.
Yeah, it's a low B+ for me as well. I think it's a good movie. It's a fun time, but I mean, there are aspects that I like, but is it a movie I'm going to revisit? Does it live up to what I thought?
Would I recommend this in the theater?
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think so.
wouldn't. But I'll give it a B+ for streaming. This is a streaming
It's
episode.
a streaming B+.
There you go. That's our rating for Totally Killer. So when we return, we're going to take a look at the battle of the sexes in the latest erotic thriller on Netflix, Fair Play. Stay right there.
Going to cheerleading camp next to the abandoned insane asylum, it's like throwing good blood away.
50% of Americans like watching blood get spilled in horror movies, but only 3% donated.
Now that's scary.
How did I get so lucky?
Are you talking about me? Or your job?
Both.
I wish we could tell the whole world.
But we're breaking company policy.
You can't keep up. He's not you.
Just tell me what's going on here.
He's promoting me.
Congratulations.
Tensions rise between Emily and Luke when she gets a promotion at a cutthroat hedge fund firm that puts their relationship and possibly their lives at risk in the thriller Fair Play, currently streaming on Netflix. Bryan, you said this was an erotic thriller before the break.
Yeah, they try to market it that way.
Yeah, you know, like maybe they should time travel back to the 80s and watch Fatal Attraction.
That's the thing, though, because you go back to like the 80s and the 90s, you have Fatal Attraction, you have Disclosure, you have Basic Instinct. I mean,
Body of Evidence.
Yeah, like all of these movies that were erotic thrillers back in that era. I mean, that was a genre of film, and it felt like this movie was trying to replicate or emulate that genre, that kind of bygone genre. And although I enjoyed the movie, it doesn't really hit those marks in the way that those movies in the 80s and 90s did.
It's hard for me to watch this film and put myself in their perspective. I mean, like, that's the whole point of movies, is you're supposed to travel into their point of view and live their lives, right? But I just kept feeling myself in those situations. And Alden Ehrenreich's character, when his fragile little masculinity gets bruised just a tad, he becomes such a crybaby monster, and it's just like, girl, you gotta go. You gotta go. Get out of this relationship immediately. Don't even allow this to escalate to where the film ultimately goes. And I just found the road to the climax to be so painful.
It does. Looking back on the film, I kind of got caught up in the ride of it, just to seeing how Alden Ehrenreich's character kind of just descended more into.
He's so pathetic.
He's extremely pathetic, but I kind of enjoyed seeing that in the movie and to see how far he would go.
I was doing the same where it's like I'm taking my glasses off, I'm like rubbing my eyes, I'm like watching through my fingers. I was so squirmy.
It's a hard
Fair Play.
It is a hard watch in that respect. But I mean, we see movies like that in other instances where they're hard to watch, and we feel squeamish and the characters making dumb decisions, but you can't turn away from it. And I felt that way.
I wish the movie went full Fatal Attraction, right? So when we get to a certain point, and there is no going back with this dude, right? The sins that he commits upon her. Like, I want it to go full bunny time. I want this to be Fatal Attraction. I want this to be a 90s thriller. I want this to have been directed by Paul Verhoeven. I want bloodshed. And you get a little. But not enough for me to make up for the squirming uncomfortableness. I don't get a release the way that I wanted to. But maybe that's my problem.
But you know what? I agree, because the way this movie is kind of being marketed, it feels like it wants to go that far, and it feels like when you get to that final scene, it pulls back. And that doesn't feel satisfying when they do that. And I get your point, because I would love to see them go full Fatal Attraction, especially in those final scenes. But it's like they never. I don't know if the directors feel like, okay, no, maybe we shouldn't, or maybe we're telling a different type of story.
This is a movie of the moment, and maybe it's for me, too of the moment, and it ventures too closely to reality. I was looking for some extreme escapism, and the movie's just not going to give it to me. And maybe that's the point too.
Yeah, I mean, let's go to some of the performances. I know we talked about Phoebe Denevere, who plays I forgot the character's name already, but forgive me for that.
Yeah, and Ms. Fairplay.
Yes, and Alden Ehrenreich, who we haven't, he's been around here and there. I think they give very good performances.
I think they're great. I think the performances are fantastic.
And he's a side character, or Eddie Marson.
Oh, so good.
I like him in everything I see.
Everything.
I mean, and he's, I first came to know him in some of the Edgar Wright movies, and he's so good in playing like these kind of like villainous, devilish kind of like CEO bosses, but then he can also kind of play like the meek, kind of scared.
Yeah,
like,
you're trying to figure out who is he in this movie.
Yeah,
like how bad is this guy?
Yeah.
And that's kind of fun to watch too.
Yeah, he's just always fun to watch. I love seeing him pop up in movies everywhere. So he was always always good to watch. But yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoyed the ride of it. I do agree with some of the points that you're making about the movie, but yeah, I kind of just got caught up in the ride.
This is much more of a Sundance movie than it is a Netflix thriller.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because Netflix bought this at Sundance, and it got a great reception at Sundance.
It did.
So
yeah, I would recommend watching Eileen instead, which also was bought out of Sundance. The new Anne Hathaway film. I'm sure you're going to hear about it later. Don't worry about it, Bryan.
I have heard about it. Okay, yeah, I'll look out for that. What's your rating for this one?
I did not enjoy watching it. I found it very, very painful.
Okay.
And your mileage may vary. I gotta go B-.
Okay.
It just was not my thing.
I'm gonna go B plus. I agree with all your points, but I can't deny that watching this movie, it was a fun ride to watch.
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. And like I say, as squeamish and as hard as it is to watch Alden Ehrenreich descend into being kind of like this crybaby, pathetic person.
Stab him.
It's fun to watch him kind of go into that descent. So. So, yeah, those are our thoughts on Fair Play. When we return, we're going to take a look at the newest courtroom drama starring Jamie Foxx and Tommy Lee Jones. Stay right there.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
You're a fighter.
Oh, I'm a fighter. You are too, Jerry. You're a fighter, man. You know why I say you're a fighter? Going up against this big loan group, man. Small business owner, man. That's something, Doc. That's why we connect. What made you want to do it?
Because he tried to mess with the one thing that means the most to me in life. Being able to leave something behind for my children, my grandchildren, when I go. They have a legacy, Willie. And I do mean to pass it on to them.
Jamie Foxx and Tommy Lee Jones see the fighter spirit in one another in the crowd-pleasing, delightful film The Burial, now streaming on Prime Video. So, Brad,
I think you buried your review in that little sentence there. Delightful.
I thought it was a delightful little film. We may disagree on this one. We're giving people a little preview here. But no, Jamie Foxx, Tommy Lee Jones. I mean, The Burial. This is a movie right now streaming on Prime Video. Jamie Foxx plays like this really kind of extravagant, flamboyant type of lawyer. And
a contract lawyer.
Contract lawyer, yeah. And Tommy Lee Jones makes a bad deal with he works for a
he has a funeral home. He has his own funeral home business. He has a few funeral homes, and he's struck a deal with Bill Camp. And anytime Bill Camp's in your movie, you should not strike a deal with that guy.
Yeah. So he has to bring Jamie Foxx in, and you know what? This reminded me of a lot of those '90s courtroom movies that we got that we seem like.
Is this not a retro review? I thought this film was from 1994.
Oh, no? But is that a bad thing?
Yes.
I like that. I like that though. I like that aspect of it.
This movie felt so old, Bryan. And I'm just tired of watching these 3.5-hour movies, like these epics that they keep putting out there in front of us. They're just so long, and you feel the time.
But this one's not 3.5 hours.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Sure felt like it, Bryan. This movie is old and dusty and long and never ending.
I fell into that one. Okay.
Yeah.
But look, I don't know how to go against that. You know, like I said, I can't change your mind. I can't change your mind on that. But I liked the aspect of this movie. Like it felt, the way I described it, like even in that diatribe that I said, as far as like it was delightful, I felt that it has this kind of breezy feel to it. You know, it's a very light movie. It's a movie that's not too heavy, even though it's dealing with some heavy concepts, especially like Bill Camp's character and how he's using and abusing the system, and abusing the system within the black community, you know, of funeral homes and things like that. So it's dealing with some heavy issues, but it has this very kind of, I don't know, like a breezy vibe to it.
It's very light. It's very light, and like, you know, Tommy Lee Jones and Jamie Foxx acting against each other is great to watch. You know, like I'm not going to deny you that they are so good together. My problem with it is when it would separate from those two. I feel like there are scenes in this movie that are so unnecessary. Journey Smollett is introduced as the opposing counsel, and you know, she's great. I love her.
I like
and
her.
She's good in this movie, but I don't think she belongs in this movie. Like, I just don't think those scenes benefited the overall narrative and just made the film stretch into that 3.5-hour runtime I was talking about.
Yeah.
And then like the relationship that Jamie Foxx has with his wife, and we keep cutting back to them, and I don't think that their scenes really contribute to the story at all.
You know what? That I can agree on, because going to a movie we reviewed earlier in this episode, when we talk about the relationship between, you know, like you know, a husband and wife, you know, looking at Benicio Del Toro and Alicia Silverstone, where that's a movie that's focused on Benicio Del Toro and his journey in that movie, but yet those scenes with her, you know, really resonate. But then we get to Jamie Foxx and the scenes that he has, you know, alone with his wife, when we get away from the main plot, just those don't really resonate in the way that you're kind of.
Those are the scenes we thought we were going to get in Reptile, and then thankfully we did not. You know. I just. As we get to the ending of the burial and we get the sort of the uplifting conclusion, it's actually not uplifting, you know, and there is a tragedy that extends well beyond the burial, and we get that tragedy in little snippets, you know, in little bits of paragraphs. But that's it. And like I just feel like this film was, like you said, it's breezy, it's light, it's fun. There's not much to it. Like it didn't work for me. I'm glad that it worked for you, and I don't want to steal this movie from you.
No.
But it just didn't work for me.
Okay. No, and that's fair, because like I said, and I see your points, but I mean, I just know it worked for me as far as like just watching this movie. I saw a lot of that stuff, especially the relationship between them, what the movie was kind of speaking on, with deeper issues within like that whole like field of the funeral home business and things like that. I thought all that stuff really just kind of worked for me. But what's your overall rating for this one?
I have to go B-. I'm never going to watch it again. The end.
Well, no, not saying, but I like the movie. It's a B+ for me.
Good.
So, I enjoyed this movie.
You got to pay attention to Jamie Foxx and Tommy Lee Jones when they get together on a movie.
And before we get out of here, I just wanted to mention that because, you know, Jamie Foxx, I mean, it's been well documented that he did go through some health scares earlier this year. And watching this movie and we've talked about Jamie Foxx, you know, off air, and we've talked about how much of a great performer he is, and just wanted to give him his flowers because he is great in this movie. And I mean, he is an actor that, you know, I think we need to cherish every time we get to see a performance from him, and just how different a lot of his different performances are. And for me, I really enjoyed watching him in this movie. So I just wanted to just, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's nice to watch a movie from the 90s, right? That decade?
Yeah. I love the 90s. All right. So those are our thoughts of The Burial. So let's go ahead and recap what we reviewed this week. Let's go back to Reptile. Me and Brad both gave that a B+. Totally Killer, we both gave that a movie a B+. Fair Play, we split on that. Brad gave that a B-. I gave that one a B+. And The Burial, we split yet again. Brad gives that a B-. I gave that one a B+. So, thank you for joining us on this latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. Come be a part of the conversation. If you have questions, suggestions, feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we will see you at the movies.